Right now, the White House is preparing for peace talks as the fragile ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran remains intact. And according to CNN, Vice President J.D. Vance and other senior members will go to Pakistan this Saturday to continue the conversation. The vice president spoke about the ceasefire during his visit to Hungary. And there are some conflicting reports surrounding the status on the Strait of Hormuz. While the White House says it is seeing more ships getting through, independent analysts say there's no change in traffic since the ceasefire was announced. Adding to the complications, Iran published a chart suggesting it put sea mines in the key waterway, and it's unclear whether they are still there.
What the president did is he basically issued an ultimatum to the Iranians. He said, open up the straits, stop trying to hold the world's economy hostage, and we'll engage in a ceasefire. And that's exactly the agreement that we came to last night. The Iranians have agreed to open up the straits. The United States has agreed to stop attacking. And not just the United States, but also our allies have agreed to stop attacking.